Still on the quest to find missing horsepower this afternoon, I decided to run a few electrical tests on my Ke-jetronic. As you can see, I've tapped into the EHA valve and I'm measuring the current inside the car with a bench multimeter. I've also got a second device tapped in to the O2 sensor that's still in circuit, so the ECU is going to operate as intended. We will be able to see the O2 sensor on the oscilloscope and the EHA current on the multimeter. Now, key on, engine off, you should expect to see around 20 milliamps as we're seeing here, so that's within spec and working fine. Now it's just a case of watching the warm-up process. Nothing particularly exciting here. It just goes through its normal process of getting up to almost operating temperature. We will see shortly where it gets to the point in operating temperature that it can safely switch over to closed loop mode. As you can see on the right hand side, there's absolutely nothing going on with the oxygen sensor yet because this is open loop mode. It has not reached operating temperature. Now this section here, it is continuing to warm up. I have sped it up considerably because this would be extremely boring to sit there and watch, but we will see some action shortly. Now on this particular car, just as the temperature needle reaches under the first gradation mark, the ECU will switch over to closed loop mode. As you can see on the scope now, you can see rich lean cycling occurring, and you can also see the EHA valve being actuated by the ECU, which is causing that rich lean cycling. This is also directly related to the duty cycle reading you get from the diagnostic socket, so this is not strictly required, but it's more interesting to see it this way anyway. After playing around with a friend's 560 yesterday and noticing the massive improvement by adjusting the EHA valve, I decided to test my car and see if it's also leaning out under part throttle. It is not, because as you can see, the ECU still has full control of the situation and is doing the rich lean cycling. If there was for any reason a fault causing the system to run lean, under part throttle, it would not be able to do rich lean cycling. So there is no fault with my Ke-jetronic. And here I am doing the test again at an even higher RPM. I will go up to about 3000, and you can see that it still has full control of the situation. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this fuel injection system. It's working as it was originally intended, so this is how it should be. If there is any missing horsepower, it's not because of a fuel injection issue. As you can see here, even turning on the air conditioner, the ECU is aware of this situation, takes a brief moment to take care of itself, and then it goes back to business as usual. So there is nothing wrong with this system. I decided to move on to testing the catalytic converter. I have a suspicion that it's doing absolutely nothing, and as you'll see shortly, I'm correct. This is how I held the RPMs at around 2,500 and proceeded to get under the car with a non-contact thermometer. To my amazement, the exhaust temperature is ridiculously low. Note that these readings are in Celsius. That's the system we use over here. It's hard to get a very accurate reading, but basically after the downpipes, the temperature of the exhaust drops very rapidly. It starts out at approximately 180 degrees at the exhaust headers, and then drops dramatically after the S-bend under the driver's floor here. And as you can see, the inlet and the outlet temperature of this catalytic converter are pretty similar. So I don't think this cat is doing anything at all. If anything, it's probably just acting as a restriction. I let the car run a little bit longer to see if it would warm up anymore, and I started to see around 130 degrees Celsius at the downpipes before the catalytic converter, and intermittently I could get a reading approximately that at the inlet of the cat as well. But as you can see, the outlet temperature is still considerably colder, so there's no way in hell this cat is working. It's not doing anything at all. And this middle muffler, well, that temperature is just ridiculous. That's probably why this car had a completely rusted out exhaust system when I got it